I've got some wood. It didn't go in very easily at all. It probably is going to twist and snap it. In fact, I really struggled to get it back in, but it turned out to be something a little bit more drastic than that. I don't even think I got it in all the way. This one's absolutely destroyed because all the bits just fall out. What's going on, guys? Now you can see that the car's in the air, and that's because today we've got a mend, not a mod. I've been rolling around in Mum's whip for a week because the Fiesta's been out of action since last weekend and I needed it to get to work. If you've been following me on Instagram, then you'll probably know exactly what's up with the car, and if you're not, go do it. And if you've not guessed it from the title or the thumbnail, we've got a problem with the brakes. More specifically, this rear caliper's sticking. Now, I was hoping it would just be something simple like a stock slider pin, but let's dive under here and show you exactly what's going on. Now you'll notice that I've already got new pads in here, and that's because the pads from this side at least were absolutely destroyed. This one's the worst. I mean, I don't know if you can see the angle on that, but that looks dreadful. And like I said, I was hoping it was just that the slider pins were sticking, or one of them was stuck, but it turned out to be something a little bit more drastic than that. I was hoping I could just sort of free them nice and easily, put a little post on Instagram, and that'd be that. But turns out we're making a full video out of it because, yeah, it's somewhat a bit more serious. So to put the new pads in, obviously I had to rewind the brake piston, and it didn't go in very easily at all. In fact, I really struggled to get it back in. I don't even think I got it in all the way, and it was a real fight to get the caliper back on afterwards. I did have a go at seeing how freely the piston was moving without the pads in and putting my foot on the brake, and once again it wasn't coming out at all. And when I put the new pads in and tried to drive it, like, it is just not releasing at all. And I mean, I couldn't spin the wheel or anything without the handbrake or the foot brake on. So I'm pretty sure the piston's not seized exactly because I did get it moving, but the piston's definitely got some resistance in there. So we're going to rebuild the rear calipers. It's also going to give me a chance to freshen up these rear calipers because at the minute they look disgusting. They just look horrible and rusty. So we're going to give them a nice coat of paint. I've already got a colour, but you'll see that later. I am waiting for the front rebuild kit to arrive as well, so if that turns up in time, we'll get those done as well. But for now, let's get this caliper off. As you can see, the slider pins are moving nice and freely. I mean, we replaced those last summer, just after I got the car, and we did brakes all around on this thing. I put new slider pins in and, cleaned everything, re-greased everything. So, I was hoping they were the issue, but I thought it was unlikely. So, yeah, they're both fine. Rubber boots are all intact because we replaced those as well. So I think the problem is definitely our caliper, and more specifically, the piston here. Just soaking the nut holding the brake line to the caliper with some penetrating fluid because it looks pretty rusty, and I'm a bit worried when I have to take that off. I've got the discs, pads, carriers and all that off on both sides. It is starting to go dark, so I think I'm going to pick this up at the weekend. So I'm going to leave the caliper attached for now. Like I said, I've soaked those lines with some penetrating fluid, so hopefully they come off nice and easily. The lines themselves, the actual hard lines, do look a little bit rusty, so I might see if I can get some new ones of those because I know that's something that will come up on an MOT. So I'll see if I can get hold of them ready for when these calipers go back together. But that's going to do it for tonight, and I'll catch up with you when I'm ready to take these calipers off. Okay, it's now the weekend, so I'm carrying on, see if we can get this caliper off. Now the only thing holding this caliper on is a cable tie and the brake line. So I'm going to see if I can crack this loose. Oh, I'm really struggling, Think we got it moving, but now is when we find out that it's actually stuck welded to the brake line itself, which is what I was really hoping wouldn't be the case, but it looks like it is. At least I've got the nut moving in the caliper, so if needs be, hopefully we can just spin the caliper off. Just before I go and fully remove that brake line, I've just remembered that I want to try and push the piston out ever so slightly, just so it makes it easier to remove once the caliper's off the car, because a lot of people use like compressed air and stuff like that in the brake line sort of hole when the caliper's off, but I don't have an air compressor or anything that can do that, so I want to get the piston out as far as I can before I take the caliper off without actually popping it out. So I'm just going to press the brake a little bit. I've got some wood, as you can see there, just resting in the caliper, and I've got another piece on the other side, so hopefully neither piston will pop out. So I'm just going to pump the brakes a little bit and see if we can get that piston out slightly, just so it makes it easier to remove. Okay, there we go. Both brake pistons are somewhat pressed out, you know, at least. I don't know if you can see that one. That one's not quite out as far. That's the one that's seized, but well, sort of seized. But yeah, so they're pushed out a little bit, so that should make it easier to remove them. Right, see if I can get this wood out and see if I can get this caliper off. The nut on it is seized to the line. That's what normally happens. Probably is going to twist and snap it, in which case I'll have to get new brake lines. Yeah, okay, yeah, the brake line just snapped. I thought they probably would, but yeah, great. That's awesome. I've ordered new brake lines already anyway, so I'm just going to try and cut the line off. Oh. Okay, so I've got the brake parts off the car inside and up on the workbench, and it's a good job because now it's started raining. I've got a range of things in here to help me clean up these brake parts, so let's show you what I've got. So I went and picked up a bench grinder, which I've currently got bolted to a piece of wood and gripped in a bench vise. It came with 2 grinding wheels, but I bought a wire wheel attachment for it, so I'm going to give that a go. Hopefully that'll help me clean up some of the smaller parts that I can actually get in here, and, you know, some of the bolts and things like that. Next thing I've got is my angle grinder with a poly wheel attachment, see if that does anything. And then for some really intricate parts, I've got my Dremel with a variety of little sanding attachments and little wire wheel things, brushes like this, some small kind of wire wheels like that, and also some of these smaller brushes to get into some really hard to reach places. So I'll see what works best. I'm guessing that different things will come in more useful for different jobs. First off, I'm going to tackle these carriers, so let's get them cleaned up and see if we can get them looking a little bit better. I'm going to start by removing the slider pins because I just don't want to damage the rubber boots or anything like that while we're cleaning these up. I will clean up the pins themselves and the holes that they sit in before we put these back together, but for now I'm just going to pop them off to the side. For now, I'm just going to give the outside surface a quick brush with a little wire brush. Just try and remove as much loose rust that I can. Next up, I'm just going to hit this with some brake cleaner. And then I'm just going to either tape up or plug up these holes the best that I can, just to stop any sort of bits from sanding or whatever getting in there. And especially with, you know, the slider pin holes, I really don't want anything getting in there. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over this with this little brush attachment on the Dremel, just to see if I can get any sort of more stubborn bits that didn't come off when I brushed it by hand. Okay, just quickly, don't get these. I do not recommend them. They are shocking. All the little wires just come flying out. They're like all over my workbench. They're stuck in my clothes. I can feel them poking through my clothes into my skin. So these are do not get these things. They are dreadful. I used it for a few seconds, like not even a minute. And like, see how like thin it looks already? Because all the bits just fall out. So yeah, don't get those. Those are So I'm going to move on to the wire wheel attachment on the bench grinder. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get into many of the spaces on these, you know, to actually clean these out, because I'm not going to be able to get in there. But, you know, fingers crossed I can do some good with it, and it'll hopefully be better than those stupid little brushes. They would have been fantastic for getting in these little areas, but like they just disintegrate. As you can see, it's not actually done too bad a job. It's looking pretty clean, but I definitely think it could be a little bit better. What I might do is, now there's quite a lot of the surface stuff off these, I might have another go with those little wire brushes, we'll see. But before I do that, I'm going to have a crack with the poly wheel on the angle grinder and just see if that can bring these up any better. It is getting quite dusty in here, and I don't really want to be in here in this confined space with all that dust around, because as you've probably seen in the past, my shed is tiny. So I'll probably head outside, have a crack with that and just see how that does, see if we can get this to come out any better, and then I might do some finishing touches with the wire brushes again. I'm going to do those outside because those little metal pieces go everywhere. Okay, so that poly wheel has actually done a really good job on the areas that it can actually get to. To be fair with the carriers, the only bits you're really going to be able to see are these bits. I'll have another crack with one of those little wire wheels outside and just see how we get on, just cleaning up some final little bits of this one. But unfortunately, I can't get them as clean as I really wanted to. I think shot blasting is the only real way to do that. And with the size of my shed at the moment, it's definitely not something I can do right now. But hopefully something we can do in the future as the channel continues to grow. I definitely love to have a go at making a shot blasting cabinet because it just comes in so handy and it'd be a cool thing to do. Now I've got the calipers off the car. I'm just going to give them a little clean down, try and remove as much of the loose stuff as I can with a little wire brush, and then we'll move on to the power tools in a bit and see if we can get these things nice and clean, ready for paint and ready for the rebuild. Okay, so that's all the sort of sanding and whatever done, and I think I've got these things looking pretty damn clean. Like, I don't think I could have gotten much better. In an ideal world, I'd have some sort of media blasting equipment to do this. But let's get on with cleaning these and then rebuilding the calipers. Now, I've been trying to work out the best way to get this piston out of here, and while I was having to play with this thing, I actually realised that if I use the handbrake lever and just keep pumping that, the piston actually keeps pushing out. So I'm hoping if I just keep doing that, the piston should eventually come out. So I'm just removing the dust seal. There's just a little lip on the inside there. So that just sits inside the first lip in there, which we're gonna have to clean out. And then there's also a fluid seal, which prevents all the brake fluid from inside the piston leaking out. I'm going to leave that in for now while we clean up sort of this area here, because I really don't want to damage that that surface where the fluid seal sits, but we will be replacing the fluid seal as well. So once I've cleaned up the caliper, got everything nice and clean, then I'll replace that seal. Just going to remove the brake line that we had in here. I'm also going to remove the bleed valve as well, but I'm going to be keeping hold of them, although I'm replacing them. Like I'm going to get new brake lines because those ones I had on the car obviously snapped where that's come off there. I've also got a new bleed valve, but I'm going to keep these for now. I'm going to put a little bit of tape over the end of them, put them back in when I paint the caliper. But I'm going to be replacing the piston, so I've not really any need to clean that down, but there is some hardware inside that I need to remove and swap over onto the new one. While that fluid seal is still in there, I'm just going to go around the inside of here with a little wire brush just to try and clean up the surface there. Like I say, I'm leaving that fluid seal in for now just to kind of protect the bore that it sits in, or the slot that it sits in, just while I go around the dust cover slot with this wire brush to clean any rust out of there, because it is quite grubby in there. There's quite a lot of rust and stuff. Okay, I think I've cleaned out all those little bits as best I can. Right now I'm going to try and remove this fluid seal in here. You don't want to use anything too sharp. I mean, I really probably shouldn't be using this little pick, but if you can just dig in under there without actually touching the surface that it sits in, and just pop that out. Again, I've got a replacement one of those. The surface inside there looks quite dirty, so I'm going to see how much I can get out. Just going to go in with like a tiny little piece of a scuffing pad or whatever. Nothing too abrasive. I don't really want to use like sandpaper or anything. You really don't want to damage that surface in there, because otherwise it won't seal properly and your brake piston will leak, I suppose. I've got a feeling that, I think from looking at it, I think this is the driver's side, so this isn't the one that actually seized, so the other one might be a bit worse, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Okay, this caliper's looking pretty damn clean now. I'm going to go and give it, I don't know, about 10 minutes just so all that brake cleaner can like evaporate off and stuff before I fit the new piston. But yeah, we're pretty much ready to put the new fluid seal in, put the new piston in, put the new dust cover on. And yeah, then we can paint these things and finally get around to reassembling the brakes. Guys, I'm really sorry, but I'm gonna have to make this one a two-parter because this video is just taking so long to edit and it's just gonna be massive if I don't do this. I'm really sorry, but in the next one, what we're gonna do is we're gonna be painting the calipers, we're gonna be rebuilding them, and then fitting the new brake lines that I've got as well, because obviously, like you've just seen, we snapped those ones taking them off. But that's all coming up, so if you're not subscribed to this channel, make sure you do, otherwise you're going to miss that, because that's the exciting one. I promise you that's coming later this week, so stay tuned. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.